Jimmy Vaca?
I wanted to reiterate what our chair just said, that the Mayor's Commission has proposed term limits, but I also wanted to let you know, I'm sure you may know this, but your board has the right to implement term limits for officers now. Any community board can vote and modify their bylaws.
That's
and
right.
they can insert term limits for officers. Now, in the Bronx, historically, we've had some boards that elected not to do that, and we've had many chair people serving for 20 and 30 years. And we had boards like, I was a district manager of Community Board 10. My board, while I was there, had a 2-year term limit. So some boards did elect for term limits, other boards did not. But you have the power now on your board to implement term limits for officers. What the mayor is proposing is term limits for members, which in 10 years will end up being a term limit for the officer of 10 years as well. But if you wanted to make it 2 years or 3, you have that power right now.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you both. Thank you. Next up will be Councilmember Diana Ayala and Chris Walters.
Madam Chair, you moved the list up. The councilwoman was on the bottom of the list. You moved it up there. That's not right. We have people here waiting.
Yes, I agree. We're going to let the councilwoman speak.
On your discretion.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Just make a note that I object to it.
Okay. I will. And your name?
Egidio Cementelli.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Councilwoman Ayala.
Good evening. Good evening, Charter Revision Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I am Councilmember Diana Ayala, co-chair of the City Council's Progressive Caucus. In this testimony, I will be focusing on the city's land use powers and processes, which has wide-reaching effects to critical issues affecting the city. This issue is a priority for the 22 members of our caucus, who represent districts across the 5 boroughs of New York City. It is no secret that the city's land use and planning processes are deeply flawed. Opposition to recent rezonings have made it clear. New Yorkers are unhappy about the city's land use process. The current system frustrates community members, grassroots organizers, elected officials, and planners alike. This is because the city's approach to planning is basically reactive. Without a larger citywide plan in place, we react to private development, natural disasters, school seats, homelessness, and other important infrastructural needs randomly. In the Bronx, we are experiencing an unprecedented level of development and growth. As an elected official from the Bronx, I can tell you from my experience, the status quo of ad hoc planning is just not working. We need a larger vision, one based on our short-term and long-term needs. We need a larger vision based on equity. A vision in which low-income communities do not have to solely bear the brunt of the city's every housing and infrastructure needs. We need to envision a land use process where communities are empowered and the equitable distribution of city resources, facilities, new developments is prioritized. As a first step, I will share 5 guiding principles that reflect the caucus's values and will drive the development of our recommendations moving forward. 1, equity and fairness, to ensure that all communities are doing their fair share and have access to affordable housing, services and amenities, and healthy environment. 2, proactive and responsive plans. The account for housing, for the housing needs of those growing cities, as well as existing conditions and infrastructural needs. Inclusive engagement, to ensure all New Yorkers have a voice in the land use decision process. Resiliency and sustainability, to guard against the future impacts of natural disasters and climate change. Transparency and accountability, to ensure that New Yorkers understand how and why decisions are made, how to participate, and how those decisions will affect them. Guided by these principles, the Progressive Caucus is working with our community partners to develop specific recommendations to achieve the following 3 goals. 1, create a comprehensive planning framework that includes a fair share analysis. 2, make the City Planning Commission independent and create a long-term planning office. 3, empower communities to engage in decisions before, during, and after land use processes. Our current system does not provide an avenue in which we have an honest conversation about our city's needs. Much of it is done out of the public eye, with outcome review, and often negotiated with just moments before a final vote. This method is not working. We need to engage in proactive planning that is not guided by the latest real estate speculation, but by data, local input, a commitment to right paths inequities, and projected long-term needs.
If you could wrap up.
Yes. Over the next several months, we will be refining the proposals that we have laid out today alongside our colleagues and community partners. Thank you to the commissioners for your time, and we look forward to working with you, our colleagues in the city council, and the community partners to refine recommendations that reflect the principles and achieve the goal that we have outlined here today. Thank you.
You're welcome. Quick question for you. When you were talking about an independent elected planning commission, is that instead of the city council?
Actually, yes, sorry.
No. Only the person whose name is called can speak. Sorry.
It would be independent of the city council. I mean, I think based upon
So
our
you-
research, the charter mandates that, would have to require that it be an independent body.
But you would see that there would be one independent elected body and then another independent elected body would vote?
Well, I would need Zara because they're the ones that are doing the research on this. I'm here testifying on behalf of the caucus today, but they can give the data.
If you have data, we would appreciate
Yeah.
your submitting it to us, but really only
Yeah.
the person who was signed up.
No,
can
we
speak.
appreciate that.
Are there other, yes, I see Paula,
Yes.
and then Allison, following, Jimmy Vaca, and then Carl Weisbrod.
Clarifying question,
Yeah.
are the principles how you would measure success in decisions, are you proposing those are measures of success for making land use decisions?
I'm sorry.
The principles that you listed,
Yes.
are they what you have defined as the measures of success, the
Yes.
criteria?
Yes, I believe so, and I mean, based on personal experience, we just went through a rezoning. My district is actually split in two halves, right? 50%, 49% actually East Harlem, 51% in South Bronx, and we just went through an extensive rezoning process, and I think that had we had these measures in place, the process would have been a little bit easier to have to go through. We're really at a point where we're being reactive, and we're using the tools that are available to us that don't necessarily allow us to build and develop or prepare for a future that is actually affordable to the communities that live and are being impacted by these rezonings.
Hi, thank you, Councilmember, so much. I missed the three criteria.
Yes, sorry,
You could just
a little bit hoarse.
repeat.
So, creating a comprehensive plan, planning and fair share framework, right, which would be, so the city needs to assess as a whole, the need for housing, public facilities, and neighborhood and amenities. So right now, we're doing it by piecemeal, right, which community is going to find the quickest, and then we're reacting to that and developing a plan around that, an action plan around that, to rezone those communities, but we're not necessarily taking a holistic look at the city. And while we're rezoning one community, 3 communities are, going through the same process. And so we need to have a more uniform policy in terms of framework to address that. And then the second was making the City Planning Commission independent and creating a new office for long-term community planning. So right now there's the mayoral majority on the CPC, and the chair that simultaneously directs the City Planning Department is the framework, right? The City Planning Commission must be reformed to ensure greater objectivity and independence from political actors, is what we're asking for. And then the third was empowering communities to engage in decisions before and after the land use processes. The community boards, for example, have all been, desperately asking for land use experts on their staff, and they just don't have the financing to have someone, on board. And so we're asking that be a consideration as well.
Jimmy Vaca?
Hi, Jimmy.
Hi, Diana. I know where you're coming from, obviously, as somebody who was there. Let me say one or two things briefly. The City Planning Commission is controlled by the mayor at this point.
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't clear. Are you saying that the City Planning Commission, you said it should be independent? Should it be
Yes.
an elected body of people, or should it be appointed by a multitude of people so that no one individual has controlling power, but that power is dispersed among various people so that there is a better opportunity for the planning commission to modify items? What do you
think that
say, when you say independent, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, I would always vote, I would always argue on the side of, voting someone in. Electing people in is a better way. But, I think that that's something that we're, discussing with local community-based groups to try to kind of define, more specifically.
So you're open as to, or the Progressive Caucus is open about what the planning commission would look like, but
Yes.
you no longer want the planning commission to have a majority of its members
That's
appointed
right.
by the mayor.
That's right, because depending on the mayor, the outcome is pretty obvious.
Okay, quickly, you're aware of 197A in the New York City Charter, 197A plans, which the community boards can
Or community
call
groups.
upon. Many community boards are frustrated
Yes.
that they are only advisory in nature.
Yes.
So is something you're talking about, having 197A plans have more teeth through a community planner that the board is assigned to have? I know you came out in favor of that in your testimony.
I am not aware that we have had that discussion, but I don't think that is a bad idea.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Carl?
Yes, I have a few questions. First of all, you had very comprehensive testimony. Can you
I would-
submit that?
We
to
can,
us?
Zara submitted it.
If we have a copy, that would be, okay, thank you. When you talk about a comprehensive plan for the city, what body do you envision that actually prepares that plan?
I don't know. I think that that's part of what we were asking the charter to kind of consider, right? It has to be an independent, body, but it's pretty obvious that, we're heading in the wrong direction here with rezoning, specific communities. We just saw the mess that was, in Inwood, and, the communities are completely split on this issue, right? You have members that kind of understand that we need to do something, but are we doing everything that we can? I don't think so. I think that we can be building, smarter, and I think that we can be preparing for more deeper, affordable options for community residents that are being pushed out day in and day out. And so what that body looks like, I just came back from vacation, and I volunteered to come in and testify today and have been part of some of these discussions, but the teeth of the meat of the legislation and the proposals really comes from Zara, who's our director, and she can share more if you want. If you want some more data, we can submit it in writing. Yes.
Madam Chair, and you also asked for equity and fair share requirements, and as you know, we currently do have in the charter fair share provisions, and so
They don't work. I'm sorry, but
so
in my district they don't work.
how would you suggest they be changed to make them more effective?
I would eradicate them because they don't work. I mean, I wouldn't call fair share a community like mine in the South Bronx, where we're oversaturated in shelters and methadone clinics and, all type of programs that reap no real benefit to the community, the residents that live there. That's not fair share. It's not fair share, when you just assume that because we're, the people that live there are poor and people of color, that it is okay to just, dump everything on that community. So I would completely eradicate it.
I do appreciate that there's been a lot of concern about how fair share operates, but I'm just interested in how you think it should be changed, if you know.
It's a difficult, question to answer, right? We have, and I'll use the shelters as an example. We have maybe 20 of them in my district, and then you go to Queens, and people are fighting because they don't want the one, right? But I'm pretty sure that those communities are also putting people into the shelter system, and I think that, whatever tools the city is using to analyze and to determine where families are placed, is a flawed process. We're putting children, we're removing them from the communities they know and putting them into schools, and now they become transitional, and now you have failing schools that are failing because children are not receiving the holistic services that they need because they've been ripped out of their communities. And so I don't know what the process looks like, and I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I understand how the city makes these decisions, but I can tell you that based on the fact that I am a recipient of a lot of these social service programs that come into my community, which I'm not saying, and I want to be very clear that I am not objecting to having a shelter in my district. I just don't think that my district should bear the burden for the entire city.
Sal?
Council member, let me congratulate you on raising two very important issues. I think the issue of infrastructure and long-term planning is causing a lot of consternation around the city. Question is, how do we address it? I mean, there are a number of proposals. Someone submitted a proposal that I submitted to the staff that would mandate a deputy mayor for infrastructure who's an urban planner. And that person would chair the city planning commission. And part of their responsibility would be to issue report cards on our city's infrastructure on an annual basis, which in many areas is collapsing, and also to come up with a plan, either biannually or annually, in terms of the city's development. How do we develop the city? How do we make it work for everyone? But certainly, I look forward to what the Progressive Caucus is considering, and hopefully, I'm sure the commission will as well. But I want you to consider that idea as well, and I'll be more than happy to share more information.
We're still refining some of these, and some of my colleagues will be testifying at other boroughs, and so you should be hearing more from us.
Allison?
Hi, I just had a couple follow-up questions. As I think more about it, and I appreciate all of the goals and the principles, obviously, what we're trying to accomplish, but if you create one citywide rezoning plan, would the city council lose its approval rights? Because it seems that one potential downside is that once you actually are thinking about the city as a whole and not neighborhood to neighborhood, which in theory I certainly agree with, you actually diminish the ability for individual communities and impacted communities to engage in the process, because it's much harder to engage in a process that crosses 5 boroughs, 8+ million people, than it is to engage in a process that is based in your neighborhood. And so how would you actually maintain the existing community engagement within the ULURP process if you're not having localized ULURP processes?
I don't think that we should. I'm not proposing, and I don't think that the focus is proposing a citywide rezoning. I think that what we're asking for is a holistic review of the entire city and looking at those areas that may be problem areas, areas that are heavily gentrifying, areas where rents are skyrocketing, areas where we have maybe some of the oldest tenement buildings where we know that people are being outpriced, areas where we still have maybe city lands on which we really have very little of these days, where there's a potential for development. I think that's what we mean, is being more proactive in looking at that instead of just saying, well, East Harlem, Inwood, they're gentrifying. Let's rezone there. I think we have issues, citywide. We have issues in Staten Island. We have the same issues in Brooklyn, but we don't have a plan. We're looking at we're piecemealing it, and it just doesn't work.
Jim?
Thank you, Councilmember Ayala.
Yes.
And I too, good, how are you?
Good
Good to see you. Thank you for having me. I too am very sympathetic with these goals. There's one area that I've been working on with the borough president for the last 5 years, with the borough president, which is inclusive engagement.
Yes.
And we've worked very hard to bring stakeholders, community groups, community representatives, community board members together, pre-certification, pre-ULURP certification, whenever there's a large or impactful rezoning. So, when the Progressive Caucus meets, I would love to hear more from you guys on, should there be triggers for when that occurs? Are you proposing that somewhere in the system there be the ability to have a process pre-certification? When would that ability kick in? I know you're probably not there yet, but
Yeah.
I'd be very interested in hearing that, because so much of these things, the devil's in the details, and either they can be done perhaps hopefully in a way that's workable, but we don't want it done in a way that will overburden the whole process. But I'm very interested, and I'd like to hear more.
Sal?
Council member, in this discussion, we can't separate the influence of money in politics on these rezoning issues. I'm sure you're aware of that. And one of the things that hopefully we'll look at is to revamp our campaign finance laws. Other cities like Seattle have democracy vouchers, which basically is public financing of campaigns, which we've seen, as you know, a number of scandals with pay to play over the last 8 years. And going back, money in politics plays a big role. So so-called independence is impacted by campaign contributions. So I would hope that the Progressive Caucus looks at some of the proposals that are out there. We're looking at Seattle, democracy vouchers, Arizona, Connecticut, where they've taken money out of the process. And you can't separate those. Real estate is like in New York City, like oil to Texas. It's very, very lucrative. There's a lot of political influence by major donors on the political players in the city. So, as part of this process, I would urge the caucus to look at a different approach to campaign finance, because what we have in the city is not working.
I appreciate that. I think that, what I would add is that, some of my colleagues are actually going, through this process as we speak, and that is a very grueling process. It's just as grueling for the constituents as it is for the elected officials, because we are, between a rock and a hard place. We either do something now and allow our communities to continue to gentrify, or we step in, we intervene, and we rezone in a way that allows us to develop something that the community will find useful. And it isn't always because we're being reactive and we're not really giving it a thoughtful, review, that we're forced with, housing in the 40, 60, 80% of the AMI bracket, which is really unaffordable to a lot of the constituents that we're trying to keep in place.
Thank you. I think Lindsay,
I had a question. I would love to hear your thoughts, and maybe it's for a follow-up, or you have something written. There are existing planning staff. You pointed out accurately that urban planning is very technical, and then use itself is incredibly technical. It's very much an in the weeds kind of area. But we have staff at the Department of City Planning. There are external groups like the Regional Plan Association that do a fair bit of work on looking at demographics in terms of where are people likely to move, where is job growth, like that inform a lot of the work that goes into some of the neighborhood by neighborhood activity. But is that existing apparatus something you feel like does not have the level of transparency you would like? Do you not feel like you have enough access to the data?
It doesn't happen soon enough. That conversation is you don't come into a community until after there's already something to respond to. And I think that you could get there sooner. We did in East Harlem. We did an extensive East Harlem neighborhood plan that allowed community residents, stakeholders to participate in the conversation. But a lot of those conversations realistically were steered in a certain direction because we were limited to a box of possibilities, and so we had to react to that or nothing.
I guess I meant less specific to trying to respond in the moment to that, but in your day-to-day life as a council member, the level of access you have to the staff at the Department of City Planning or existing planning organizations that are doing this long-term work that is not specific to
the access is there. The access is there.
It is there.
Yeah, it is there.
But it's not adequate to get to the informed long-term.
I don't know. I think that it depends on the elected official, right? It depends on what's happening in a specific community. I think, our days are pretty grueling, and we're dealing with a million issues, that are coming at us simultaneously, and it's very difficult for us as well, to just sit there and dedicate the amount of time, and that's why the community boards are really crucial as part of this process, and that's why it's important that they also have land use experienced staff, because that's where the work begins, right? That's the grassroots work is done. And they advise to, to the local council member. So yeah, but the services are available. I mean, the resources are there.
Carl?
Yes, council member, I think if I understood you correctly in response to a question from Commissioner Hirsch, you don't think of a comprehensive plan as being a new zoning resolution,
No.
but so with something along the lines of Plan NYC or One NYC, which charter requires the city to do every 2 years, which is a broad update on and approach on many of the issues, but perhaps not all of the issues that you raised, be the kind of approach to a comprehensive plan that you have in mind?
If we put those ideas to action, yes. But if we're writing them down and we're sharing a brochure, no.
But a comprehensive plan, if I understand what you're saying, is something not exactly on the a matter of law, but rather a plan, literally, that then gets implemented through law over time. Is that a fair?
But you do that now. You do that now, and we haven't seen the outcome, right? And so I think that it takes a charter review to make, it takes a mandate sometimes to make, to effectually change. And I think that, I've read those books of suggestions and wonderful ideas, but they never come to fruition. And so that's my concern. And I think that that's the concern of the caucus as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we'll be hearing more from the Progressive Caucus, and you'll submit some additional material.
Thank you.
And thank you for waiting, Mr. Walters.
Good evening, Chair Benjamin, and good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to testify tonight. I'll be speaking broadly on the same theme as the Council Member on land use reform. My name is Chris Walters, and I'm the Rezoning Technical Assistance Coordinator at the Association for Neighborhood and Housing Development, ANHD. ANHD is a coalition of neighborhood groups throughout New York City working to ensure the right to affordable housing and thriving, equitable neighborhoods for all New Yorkers. In my role in ANHD, I provide technical assistance to community groups engaged in campaigns around large-scale neighborhood rezonings, including the Jerome Avenue rezoning that was approved earlier this year here in the Bronx. Through my work with these groups, I've seen firsthand the unfortunate ways in which New York City's current land use process is simply not working for low-income communities. This fact is reflected in numerous land use actions, including neighborhood rezonings that increase displacement pressures for low and moderate income neighborhoods, while failing to provide housing that is affordable to the majority of the community. Public land being given away to for-profit developers, and community members and community boards whose voices and recommendations are largely ignored. The way land use decisions are made and who has a say in them truly matters, and the consequences, as I'm sure you'll hear throughout these hearings, are very real. Too many low-income communities feel they have no agency in the changes taking place in their neighborhoods, while too many wealthy communities remain exclusionary and are not asked to do their part. Changing the way land use decisions are made in NYC, then, is a matter of equity. Low-income communities should not have to bear the brunt of new density for a growing city, or accept luxury apartments in order to get long overdue investments. We need to use the charter revision process to reimagine how land use decisions are made in a way that increases community power in the planning process to advance the equitable distribution of city resources, facilities, and new development. On behalf of ANHD and its members, I urge the Commission to make land use reform, specifically with the aim of increasing equity across neighborhoods, a central focus of your upcoming efforts. ANHD will be working with its members to develop more specific proposals to advance these goals, and we look forward to sharing these with the Commission in the weeks and months ahead. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walters. Mr. Vaca.
I'm interested in your testimony, but I wanted to touch on something, and I wanted to know if this is included in your overall assessment, namely as of right development. We have communities that get a notice that a new building is going up, and because that building meets the zoning, even if the community has concerns about density or lot line to lot line development, they are told it is a matter of right and nothing you can do. So I want to know where do you fall on this issue? Is this something that you've heard from your constituent organizations, that there is a willingness to discuss, or a feeling that this should be included?
Sure. I don't want to get ahead of our membership right now in terms of what specific recommendations we put before the charter committee. I know in terms of our base building groups and organizing, working with developers for as-of-right buildings, looking for what leverage they can, trying to really get that community input and community interests in these developments is something our groups are very interested in. Whether as-of-right is something that we as an organization and our members would want to address through charter reform, I wouldn't speak to right now. But I think that this larger issue of equity in terms of where every neighborhood is seeing, is every neighborhood getting the resources that it needs? Is every neighborhood doing its part for absorbing new density in the city? Is every neighborhood doing its part for accepting city facilities, both what are considered positive and negative?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Walters. Our next speakers are Alexis Lorenzo and Jane Aoyama Martin.
Good evening, I'm Jane Aoyama Martin. I'm the project director of Bronx Legal Services. This is Alexis Lorenzo, our director of foreclosure prevention and community economic development. On behalf of our clients and the Bronx communities that we serve, we want to thank the New York City Charter Commission for holding these public hearings. Bronx Legal Services is part of the larger Legal Services NYC, which is the largest civil legal services provider in the country. For over 50 years, we've challenged systemic injustice and helped clients meet basic needs in housing, education, healthcare, family stability, income, economic security. Our neighborhood-based offices across the 5 boroughs serve 80,000 New Yorkers every year. In the Bronx, last year, we served 28,000 low-income Bronx residents with all of their legal issues. Last year, we protected nearly 13,000 tenants and their families who are facing eviction. Our work in the area of housing puts us in a position to understand the complex housing crisis facing our clients daily. It's from this breadth of experience that we testify today, and at this point, we're sharing our time. I'd like to turn it over to Alexis Lorenzo.
Thank you. Good evening, Commission members. As Jane mentioned, my name is Alexis Lorenzo, and I not only work in the Bronx, but I am a lifelong resident. We at Bronx Legal Services have had the privilege to work with many long-term residents and community leaders in the Bronx. While we are a full-service legal services organization, much of our work has been focused on helping our clients keep a roof over their heads, the basic essential human need for a place to live. In our practice, we are witnessing a shrinking housing stock, unaffordability and displacement of families every day caused by rezoning, market speculation, and greedy landlords. We are witnessing the reduction in affordable rents and destruction of our Bronx communities. Rezoning exacerbates gentrification and displacement and causes resegregation because of the unaffordability levels of new housing stock created. To create greater accountability for affordable housing plans, we ask the Commission to consider the following 2 points. Strengthen anti-displacement protections for low-income New Yorkers. Require the city to report on how proposed affordable housing plans are compliant with the Fair Housing Act, in particular, disparate impact. Implement meaningful methods for evaluating the potential for direct and indirect displacement as a result of its affordable housing plan. This would include adding public housing land to those dispositions subject to public review under ULURP, so that residents get a meaningful say in how public land in NYCHA's inventory is used. Secondly, we would like to see meaningful community planning that is participatory, equitable, and supported by data. which would involve standardizing the community board application and selection process, establishing an independent community planning office that supports community involvement and promotes resident-led housing initiatives. It would also require the city to uniformly collect neighborhood profile data that can be shared with community residents and give agencies the information to evaluate the impact of land use activities in the long term. Finally, the Bronx is entitled to continuous and consistent investment by the city, not investment that forces out low-income and working-class residents of color and destroys our communities. Bronx residents are in need of affordable long-term housing for themselves, their families, and we need to ensure that Bronx retains its character, its diverse and thriving communities. On behalf of Bronx Legal Services and Legal Services NYC, we thank you for your time and giving us the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you very much. Questions? Jim and then Steve.
Thank you for your testimony. I had a question similar actually to what the chair asked a previous. Do you all have research on the issue of housing on public housing sites and ULURP? 197C in our Uniform Land Use Review Procedure 8 does nominally subject housing and urban renewal plans and projects pursuant to city, state, and federal housing laws. And I wondered if you guys had researched how broad or narrow that is in comparison to what one of your suggestions is. And I'd be interested to see that.
We'd be happy to follow up with the commission on additional research, but our testimony comes from our on-the-ground work, what we see, and how we help our low-income residents in the Bronx. So we can't really provide, or get ahead of ourselves with, research and discuss on, to answer your question.
Thank you. Ms. Lorenzo, could you just flesh out in brief detail what constitutes, in your mind, an independent community planning office? What would that construct be?
Not appointed, elected.
Elected, so replacing the...
That's the position we've taken.
Replacing the existing CPC with 13 elected members.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
And would that then replace the city council also?
That's our position.
Okay. Thank you very much.
They blew their speakers. They blew the mic.
But meanwhile, I can speak quite loudly. So Anita Long and Madeline Mehta.
Ms. Long? Good evening. If you could speak into the microphone.
Good evening, Charter. My name is Anita Long.
Hold on 1 second. Is that working? Okay, you may need to speak more directly.
Okay.
Into it, closer to it.
Good evening, Charter Committee, and thank you for the opportunity to allow me to speak. I am a member, citizen of the Bronx. The Bronx is the Bronx has the largest racial ethnic groups which are Hispanics, which is 55.4%, followed by Blacks, 29.5%, and Whites, which is 9.6%. In 2016, the median household income of the Bronx residents was $35,000 approximately. However, 30.5% of the Bronx residents still live in poverty. My talk is about affordable housing. The government says housing is affordable if tenants pay no more than 30% of income towards rent. But 30% of $30,000 is very different than 30% of $250,000. So when the government talks about creating affordable housing, we have to ask, affordable to whom? The government uses area median income, AMI, to create affordable housing programs. The AMI for the New York City is about $90,000 for a family of four. The average income for a family of four in the neighborhoods around Jerome Avenue is about $25,000. That's about 30% of the AMI. So when the government talks about subsidizing affordable housing, we have to ask, will it be affordable to the Bronx residents? Salaries of the city renters have not changed much in over 20 years, but the average monthly rent for an apartment in New York City increased about 40% in those years. The city's newest policy, which is called mandatory inclusionary housing, which was created for affordable housing, requires developers to set aside 25% to 30% of units in a new development as affordable housing. MIH sets the levels of affordability. Now, there are two main options that the Bronx developers will use. Option one, 10% of the apartments to households making about $36,000 or less. 25% of the apartment goes to the households making approximately $54,000 or less. And 65% of the apartments will now become market value. Option two, 30% of the apartments to households making approximately $72,000, and 70% of the apartments will become market value. Okay, I'm going to speed it up. MIH hasn't created affordable housing for the Bronx residents affected by the Jerome Avenue rezoning. There's currently no mechanism in place to create affordable housing that will reflect the needs of local residents unless we change the formula for what affordability levels are or create something new for the residents of the Bronx. You have about 80% of the population who's being left out. Indeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you know, the affordability levels of the AMI are set by the federal government, and when we take federal money, we have to use those numbers. However, the city, as you've said in MIH and in other of the housing programs, they range from 20% of AMI to 80% to try and get additional units available to different levels of income. But I do want to say that the AMI is not something the city sets, but we can decide the percentage of AMI that the housing will be available to. Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Meadows?
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide testimony to advise the next phase of charter review and revision. My name is Mullen, and I'm a Senior Associate with the Regional Planning Association. RPA is an urban planning research and advocacy organization working to improve the New York metropolitan region's prosperity, sustainability, and quality of life. This fall, New Yorkers will be able to vote on a series of charter revision proposals for restructuring New York City government In our fourth regional plan, we discussed the importance for inclusivity in the planning and development processes that govern our city. We applaud the Mayor's Commission for promoting the ideas of more robust civic engagement and solutions to diversify community boards and drive community planning. This council and commission has the opportunity to build off these efforts and provide comprehensive review and overhaul for voters in 2019. Imposing term limits on community board members, standardizing the appointment process, and using annual reporting to ensure boards represent their districts, as proposed by the Mayor's Commission, will expand opportunities for civic engagement and help create more representative body of local stewards. To reduce the knowledge gap and promote robust participation in meetings and decision-making, community board reforms should include specific tools and practices, such as expanded budgets for boards to improve capacity and accessibility. Funding should be used to hire technical experts, such as full-time urban planners, that can improve board capacity and prepare them to develop community plans. Child care and translation services for public events should be fully funded to improve community turnout and participation at events. Standardizing and requiring digital tools for engagement. Software could be implemented citywide to enable community members to participate in community board discussions and decisions without physically being at the meetings. Additionally, each community board should have predictable online presence and clarity and publicity for events and agendas, historical records, communications, and other documentation. Standardizing training for board members so that they better understand basic planning concepts and the ULIP process can help community boards better define their role in the development process and what community outcomes should be prioritized. Community boards should also be required to produce official community plans and updates on a rolling basis. If a civic engagement commission is established, the city will have taken important steps to solidifying the value and necessity for broader community participation in decision making. As currently proposed, the commission will focus on participatory budgeting, language interpretation at poll sites, raising awareness of city services, and supporting other engagement activities citywide. This entity should be given the resources necessary to take on more responsibility and reach. The commission can work with community groups and community boards to strategize local planning activities, take lead on pre-ULIP action around the city to involve the public before and during formal processes, develop a citywide planning framework sourced from community board input, and be tasked with regularly undertaking a citywide comprehensive planning process. Efforts should also be made to improve transparency and reduce the burden on city government by establishing processes, rules, and guidance to enable community-based decision-making. In addition to building awareness and consensus on projects, the city should adopt tools and systems that encourage community stewardship over neighborhood